Oh, we're live. Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
that was really fast.
I know. Hi, Maitree. Welcome to
Hello.
Winter with Grace.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
You're so sweet. Like, I'm so glad we got to meet at the like one of the parties at Humax, and maybe we could start by giving the audience a little bit of your background. So you started your career in investment banking at Citibank. You have joined at a VC firm, and now you're a principal at Acrew. Maybe we could talk about like the core lessons that you've learned early on in your career that you kind of took into working at Acrew today.
Yeah, happy to share. And it was so much fun getting to meet you at HumanX. In terms of my career, I mean, I think that biggest lesson through it all has just been to really lean into my curiosity. It's honestly resulted in taking me to some really special places. I grew up mostly in the Bay Area, but I moved around a bunch when I was younger. So I was born in India, lived in Kenya for a bit, and then moved to the States. A lot of my family members were entrepreneurs, and so had always kind of grown up admiring that journey and being energized by that hustle. If I look back at sort of my career now, a lot of it honestly has been driven by just exploring the curiosity of wanting to learn about what makes businesses great. I think about it often that it sort of looks a little bit like a reverse telescope in a lot of ways. Like I started in investment banking where supporting IPOs and, large multi-billion-dollar M&A deals, and, kind of really got the lens of what great durable businesses really look like. At the same time, just kind of the continuous power of storytelling and really backing that up with data. From there, wanted to go earlier as, my passion had always been to be around early stage founders, and had the opportunity to kind of transition to the venture side, first at a corporate venture platform, after which I joined Acrew as sort of the first investing team member about 5.5 years ago. Acrew, for context, and I know you've had a few of my partners as guests in the past, we're a multi-stage venture platform, really kind of building a platform that is intentional about, kind of supporting founders in a differentiated way and really being thesis oriented. So it's really helped me kind of develop myself as an investor over the course of the last 5.5 years. We invested from the earliest stages all the way through growth. And so really given me a lens through it all.
I actually, so I'm sorry, we're gonna like sidetrack the topics, but I've been like thinking about like, so for example, you mentioned about like thesis oriented, like I guess like how do you personally come up with a thesis? And then also like, I feel like I was like chatting with some other investors at like AGM yesterday. People were talking about like how they were doing researches and like coming up with the original data. I guess like what are things that you would be researching on to like actually come up with a thesis? Because I feel like that's kind of hard. And then some people would go through the public data, like IPO company, like where they're spending money, or like some people would talk to like every CISO of the world. But I wonder, like, is there any like specific method that you use to like actually come up with these like investing strategy or insights?
Totally. I would say obviously it's variable based on the space, but really kind of from a methodology perspective, we look at things both tops down and bottoms up. So, kind of really taking a better sense of the macro, like what are the macro tailwinds and drivers that are, kind of resulting in potentially some areas of opportunity to be exploring. As well as kind of what are we seeing percolating very much bottoms up, like what are the problem areas that builders are looking to solve, and how do those things converge? And for us, like we're really looking at where are there kind of transformative moments converging between technological shifts and demographic shifts, as well as like macro shifts to result in interesting opportunities. And so like for example, like recently we published a thesis around kind of the future of commerce, and really our view that we're going to start seeing more agentic experiences where agents are kind of going to be engaging in commercial transactions on behalf of users and businesses. And that's, kind of like driven by both technological shifts that we're observing, as well as, pattern matching to historical technological waves that have resulted in some really interesting and generational companies along the way. So I would say like we take a very much, kind of top down and bottoms up view in developing that point of view, and we complement it with a ton of conversations with industry leaders, with founders, with researchers, and kind of really complement the thesis with those conversations, and then of course like data, as you kind of alluded to.
I have a very stupid question, but like, how do you study the demographic search? Is this like from, let's say, every day you read the New York Times, or like, how does this even like evolve into like a thought or like a thesis?
Yeah, I mean, in particular, I'm really drawn to consumer behavior
Mhm,
shifts. So I'm
mhm,
like very boots on the ground. Like, what
mhm.
are the cultural
Shopping.
patterns that are happening? Yeah, what are the kind of population trends that are evolving? Right, like we'll look at population data. We'll look at a bunch of different kind of consumer spend data, consumer time data. Like
Mhm,
we look at all of these things to really kind of pay attention to what's happening and what's important and top of mind for consumers. And that's, I think another thesis area within health that we have on the patient and consumer side. A lot of what we're seeing is consumer appetite to spend and really take agency of their own health is really kind of coming to bear, and that's something that has resulted in us spending a lot of time there to find interesting kind of pockets of opportunity.
Totally. I wonder, maybe we could start with the articles before we jump back into personal development. So,
Sure.
recently you mentioned about like, e-commerce evolution, basically the agentic commerce evolution. I will open the article, and then I would love to for you to like give us some like, maybe we could explore on like how you guys think about uh oh, okay, so success. Okay. Yeah, I'm like sometimes I'm like so scared that like it's just gonna switch on to like some other stuff on my desktop, which I don't know what's gonna happen.
All good.
Um, maybe we could talk about like, what are some kind of genre trends that you're seeing while you're like writing the article, and then what is agent to merchandise, agent to agent, and all these like other um concepts that like you're introducing in the article.
Yeah, for sure. So I had a lot of fun collaborating with my partner Lauren on this, and as we were kind of thinking about what the future of the space really looks like, one of the things that we were thinking pretty deeply about is as we look at historical patterns and
Mhm,
each tech wave really resulting in some transformative businesses within commerce and payments.
mhm,
Um, we really saw like the web era unlocking opportunity for companies like Amazon and eBay that
mhm,
also necessitated new payment infrastructure.
mhm,
Um, kind of moving forward, seeing the social wave unlocking new discovery mechanisms for consumers, a way
mhm,
for merchants to more directly engage with consumers, and mobile sort of unlocking new opportunities for like based on location-based services, et cetera,
mhm,
giving rise to platforms like Uber, Instacart, et cetera. And this also resulted in necessity for more modular and seamless transactional infrastructure. So we saw the rise of kind of Stripe and Shopify during this period as well. And as we thought about a lot of what's happening now, we really do believe that there's a transformational shift really happening that will drive AI agents who are kind of acting on behalf of users, businesses, or even more autonomously, to start engaging in commercial transactions as well. And this is, even beyond just, kind of traditional shopping use cases, but
mhm,
really any transaction that is facilitated with an agent is
mhm,
going to have like very defined kind of evolved infrastructure to support that.
mhm,
Um, and so, we have been seeing a lot of activity around the space, both in terms of at the sort of like agent application layer that we see at the top of this landscape, really disrupting kind of the transactional interface for
mhm,
for consumers and businesses.
Mhm.
Many of these are, I would call it, more AI enabled today than truly agentic. But you can imagine that over time, as technology becomes more sophisticated, there are going to be ways to really have full end-to-end autonomous transactions take place. And then we started mapping out both as it relates to kind of merchants that need to adapt to this evolving time period. What are the solutions that will help them? We're already seeing a shift in, for example, search behavior for consumers, where AI is facilitating more discovery than some other platforms. And so, how do brands, merchants, et cetera, really make sure they're top of mind when consumers are searching on platforms like Perplexity and ChatGPT? I think beyond that, we pay a lot of attention to distribution and how distribution changes. And I think that we're seeing more decentralized distribution than ever before. And consumers are more burdened with choice, right? So I think that there are a lot of different dynamics that we think will result in new ways of commerce online, and I think AI and agents can really augment a lot of that. And then we also paid attention to sort of the evolution that we're seeing as it relates to kind of authentication, authorization, payments infrastructure as well that supports these transactions to really happen. Like I would say the net of it all is it's a constantly evolving space, and we're really at the earliest innings. But we're paying really close attention to how this ecosystem is evolving and maturing, and I think we're excited to make some investments in the space as well.
Totally. We actually have some people from this map, some like founder on this map went on our show before. Now I can think of like Stitch founder went on our show, and I'm sure like there's other people. I don't want to name everybody, but
Yeah.
I wonder. So like, how do you think about like so? Maybe can you walk us through the map, because I feel like this map is like really interesting. You mentioned about like there's like general purpose agents, and then there is like commerce agents. Like, for example, like a Walmart or Amazon, like what kind of agent are they applying to? Is that just like the customer service? Let's say like I'm trying to return something, and then like instead of like chatting with someone on the phone, it's like a customer service agent. Or like I guess you also mentioned about like nowadays like people are using search like a Perplexity to search, hey, I'm going to, I don't know, like a wedding, and like can I get like a dress recommendation? Like how do people really rank better in that kind of search?
Yeah, I mean, so a couple pieces to that question. Maybe I'll start with kind of up top on the agent layer, right? And as I kind of alluded to, still fairly early. I think if you think about Amazon, we have Rufus as one example, which is much more like a customer service and kind of like search agent, and then we have Alexa that you can think about as even helping to facilitate transactions as well. I think as we look at more of the vertical oriented agents that are more up and coming, as I kind of alluded to, some of these are much more, they're not fully agentic just yet, but they're enabling consumers with a more robust experience, both on the discovery side as well as, kind of facilitating a complex, kind of transaction considered purchase to come together. So I'll maybe highlight the travel section as one example where, travel is one of those spaces that is a pretty complex purchase for if you break it down holistically for a consumer. There's various vendors involved, from your hotel to your flights to the things that you'll do at your destination, as well as a lot of preference and context that's required. Am I going by myself? Am I going with my friends? Am I going with my family? How does that dictate, the types of things that I might want to do, the types of places I might want to stay? So it's a lot. We think about travel as a really interesting example of where AI can really support in creating just a fundamentally better experience for the end consumer that is much more kind of context aware and collating, kind of a complex journey and fragmented journey into one experience. So that's where, like we're pretty excited about some of the things that we're seeing there. I think similarly, like on the enterprise side, as you think about, kind of supply chain and procurement, like those are other areas that are fairly complex, have various stakeholders, a lot of it, kind of a lot of paper pushing as well. So, kind of creating a more autonomous way of servicing those transactions. And then I think the second part of your question was, sort of the evolution of search. And it's interesting because we're starting to see companies like Profound and others that are supporting businesses in ranking better in some of these answer engines, and a lot of kind of that process is just having more granular understanding of what the search terminology is looking like and how agents are, how these answer engines are kind of surfacing responses, and then being able to optimize the web pages to have more of that context directly there, because a lot of the information that's feeding into the agents today is kind of web scraped and crawled, and so how do you optimize that early on? So that's I think that's going to be the first wave, but over time, right, like you're already seeing Perplexity embedding functionality to shop within their own experience. So we'll see some of that as well. I think part of that really requires a rethinking of kind of the product catalog and kind of data availability, and so that's something that we're paying a lot of attention to.
Totally. Can you unpack a little bit on like the product catalog? Like how do you imagine like the product changing from how people search?
Yeah, I mean, I think, if I think really aspirationally, right, I think that like people aren't searching orange top, like they might search more like, I'm going to a winery and I want something to wear for that, right? So like I think that there's a lot more context and preference that isn't directly tied to how kind of product data is currently structured, and kind of enabling more optimization and context and understanding that kind of AI can help augment. I think we'll start to see that as well.
For sure. How do you think about like, since like, on this map, there's like so many sectors, like I guess like which category do you feel like, you want to place a bet on? Like, how do you think about I guess like both like from the investment perspective, obviously, and then like from, I guess like, maybe cash flow or like any other like major metrics, like which subsector you personally feel like actually will have more unicorn coming out of?
Yeah. So I think that we think about like two specific opportunities that we're excited about. One is in the vertical agent space. And I think that for us, we really do believe there will be new, effectively what were the marketplaces of the last generation, right? Like I think that there will be agent first experiences for consumers that are highly considered and verticalized. Obviously like travel was one example that we mentioned, but there will be others. So that's a space that we're looking at pretty deeply. And then the other, like, as we think about kind of our fintech expertise and really thinking about historical patterns and unlocking sort of new, call it like payment and checkout sort of experiences, we think about that as well. Like, what does that look like in an agent first world? So those are the two areas that we're particularly excited about.
I wonder, so like, wait, can you share a little bit more about like, in the agent, let's say the vertical agent space, like you mentioned travel or like fintech expertise, like I guess like in the travel space especially, I feel like there's a lot of companies that are trying to do, hey, like we're gonna book your travel for you, or like enter a destination and then say what you like, what's a vibe, and then like
Yeah.
you create like a whole shopping experience. But I feel like the shopping experience is like never end to end. That's the problem. It's like, oh, like it's like I know that some of the apps that's supposed to be doing like, it just automatically answer your credit card and then like, you book the ticket on the spot. But on the other hand, like there's a lot like the travel rewards or like, can you skip the stop or like, do all these like tailored things that you have to log into 5 different websites to actually complete the traveling booking journey. How do you think about that? And then like, is there like, I guess like from the existing player perspective, like another big challenge is like, since like we're seeing, the Amazon and Walmart and like they're all like listed on um these like major closed ecosystem agent, or like at least it's on the map, right? So all the big companies are like also implementing AI into their world, like Expedia or somewhere. How do you think about like, a new AI native company that going against like a very established player in the space?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's really important to offer like a very differentiated consumer value proposition.
Mhm,
I think that we think about that first principles from a first principles perspective. So to your point around, kind of this complicated, fragmented process to really
mhm,
book a trip.
mhm,
If we're using the travel example,
mhm,
we do think that there are nuances to that
mhm,
an agent can support in creating a much more seamless flow. It could, and this is me hypothesizing, and
mhm,
like for us, like we obviously are spending a lot of time just with founders and with builders or who are thinking about this space really deeply, but you kind of mentioned this. You might have points in one place, and you might have your United miles in another place, and that you've gotten recommendations from your friends from this other place, right? So there's like all of these different pieces and optimization, candidly,
mhm,
that an agent that can look much more holistically
mhm,
than deeply in sort of a closed ecosystem. I think that that's something that is really powerful, and I think that in terms of how that shows up, like we'll I think it's still early days, but
mhm,
we're excited to see how that emerges. But I think to your point around again, like on the travel use case, right? Like I like a generic itinerary builder, I think is fairly straightforward, and I think that
mhm,
that's already embedded in sort of the incumbent players. I think you could do
mhm,
that on ChatGPT as well, but I think really
mhm,
we're thinking much more deeply about the context, the preference, the recommendations that
mhm.
are a lot more nuanced, and then being able to kind of combine these like fragmented places of booking in one kind of interface. So we think a lot about that. And by the way, it might not start as like this player like
Mhm.
owning all of those direct relationships with vendors or even kind of doing that booking, but I think computer use agents, browser use agents can be like the front, like the first step into enabling some of that.
Totally. Maybe we could talk about the just like the agent to merchant and agent to agent definition and use case. Because I feel like that's really interesting. I feel like nowadays like everyone is talking about agent, and then we have like literally founders that are building agent managing other agents tools. But maybe we could like, for the audience who may not be familiar with it, like maybe if you could give us more context on like agent and the consumer space as a whole, as like a background, and then we can dive into this.
Yeah, for sure. So the way that we, at least right now, we're thinking about the different types of transactions that we anticipate uh, we'll see are kind of these like agent to merchant transactions as one example, where
Mhm,
very similar to the example we were talking about on the travel side, where
mhm,
an agent is completing a transaction with an
mhm,
existing kind of merchant or vendor,
mhm,
likely in the similar kind of structure that exists already. That this
mhm,
might happen via an API, or it might happen via like browser use, computer use, as I kind of alluded to. But
mhm,
um, I think that, and we're already starting to see, Stripe has an agent SDK that can support in facilitating transactions of
mhm,
this type.
mhm,
Um, I think we'll start seeing, kind of more evolution to kind of what you were alluding to, which is as we see more complex, orchestrated, multi-agent
Mhm.
systems, right? What does that look like? And from a commercial standpoint, we'll see agents interacting with other agents very directly on behalf of users, or agents interacting with other agents much more autonomously. Like they might be orchestrating agents to complete subtasks, kind of as a supervisor agent, and that's a whole different kind of system and flow. And in that example, agents will need capabilities to transact much more independently. Whereas when we think about the agent to agent use cases on behalf of users, the authentication and authorization, the user might be much more in the flow of that. Whereas we see the transaction happening much more autonomously in that third example. But again, I think some of these are emergent, like it's still very early. But this is kind of like our point of view where we'll see some interesting kind of transaction types.
For sure. I think that's really interesting. So like in that space, would you invest in the company that are building the agent, or like what are some major subcategory that you feel like are exciting? Because I feel like the authorization would be one of the big challenge. Just because like, in the end of the day, like, and then also like the decision making training and context is like very important. I actually don't know if there's any solution to that, just because I can't bring down everything I have to ChatGPT, though I feel like I definitely did that a lot of times every day. But so I guess like how do you think about the details within like these like major shift, so like from agent to merchant, and then like also like from agent to merchant, I guess like right now, like because Amazon or like Netflix, I'm sure like it's always it's giving you a lot of solution already. So like when well, I guess like Amazon, they will suggest you to like, hey, you're running out of toilet paper, you want to buy this in 2 months, or like there's like a lot of like the current solution that's kind of like along that line. But like how is the agent that's like actually truly differentiated from that experience?
Yeah, totally. And I think we think a lot about that, because I think that an agent that buys your toilet paper is probably not going to be that like accretive than an agent that has much more nuance and context around your preferences for something that is a lot more of a considered purchase. And so we definitely like think much more holistically in terms of like where there is value to be created for a consumer or a business. And so that's like one thing for sure. And then I'm sorry, I missed the second part of your question.
I guess like what are the investable parts within this entire process? Also quickly shout out to the audience. Hi Joa. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're looking, as I kind of alluded to in when we were kind of looking at the landscape, we're looking at kind of the infrastructure solutions that are supporting the payment side. We're looking at the vertical agents as well. Like obviously this is much more oriented around commerce, but we're thinking about other types of agents within financial services, healthcare. So there are a lot of different places where we see opportunity from vertical AI and applied AI.
Totally. I guess like in like for example for this map, I feel like when you are actually chatting with the different companies, what are like how do you like really mentally creating a map like this? So like I guess like how do you think about like I'm sorry, I feel like I'm asking all the really dumb questions today.
That's all good.
I was literally like just I'm very impressed because like sometimes like I chat with a lot of companies, like I can like I can't really brain dump them into a map because they like it's like
It's
kind
hard.
of like
Yeah.
it's harder to like think about like as a I think it's easy to think about it as a tree, but like I think they're all like sub different categories of things that like I feel like I'm just like I'm totally missing out like a bunch of stuff that like
Yeah, it's not an easy process for sure. I think you have to like make sense of like what is a constantly evolving and complex industry, and like this is obviously like our stab at making sense of that, but we're always open to input. And but like the exercise of this, like I mean we went through so many iterations as we were kind of like really mapping this out, and I think shout out to a handful of folks that we highlighted in the article, kind of going back and forth with them as well. Like, what are the categories? Do these categories resonate? Would you think about them structured in a different way? We went through, Lauren and I, constant iterations on this. But, we kind of landed in this format, which is like, okay, like what are the sort of transactional application layer opportunities, and then what are the enablers? And I think that helped us really crystallize, okay, now within that, like, how do we break this up even further? I think that there's a lot of interesting evolution that's happening that we're seeing every day that, is kind of converging some of these categories, or some of the companies that are on this probably bridge multiple categories, right? So I think that there's a lot of, it's sort of like a dynamic evolution, which is why we also linked backup spreadsheet. So we're constantly making those edits as well, because it's so early, and I think that it's worthwhile kind of paying attention to like how all these things are evolving.
What is headless browser? Sorry,
what is that?
What is headless browser?
Yeah, like these are like effectively ways to enable agents to kind of interact with browsers and.
Oh, okay. So like an agent for your browser.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I can't. This is like too meta for me. So I mean, those are like some really interesting category. I mean, I've seen something like Daydream before, but like I don't like. I mean, I guess like there's like so many things that I feel like it's very new to me. But like I'm also in the consumer space, especially in the infrastructure, I feel like it's really hard to actually like differentiate all these different age apps, because like they all look kind of similar. I know it's like search. I feel like it's always like ChatGPT for X. Like that's like the new trends that I'm seeing. It's just like, ChatGPT for travel, or ChatGPT for fashion, or ChatGPT for like, I don't know, real estate. But like, how do you think about like the differentiation between like all these like different age apps?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I think that's like one of the questions that we're calibrating as well. Like, where for a user, a lot of the value will accrue to an agent that has the most context and memory, candidly, of a user's preferences and context, to be able to not only suggest like more meaningful kind of recommendations, but also kind of engage in actions on behalf of users. And so that is obviously like one calibration that we think a lot about, where I think that some of the more general purpose agents, like the agents from OpenAI and Anthropic, like might have more of an advantage. But I think that as it relates to kind of the vertical agents that have much deeper kind of integrations with various systems and data sets that can create, in which they can like create a much more considered action. That's where we see like some interesting kind of opportunity. But again, like I think what we think a lot about is distribution, like how they're kind of activating consumers and businesses, how they are kind of embedding on the enterprise side, like how deeply they are within embedding within workflows, and then again, like just like how much context they're able to really capture is the other piece.
Totally. I wonder, okay, so maybe we switch gear a little bit. We could talk about the healthcare subsegment, because like I know that you guys wrote another article on this. I feel like, okay, so maybe this is not the best way to share. I know that you guys, can I share the DocSend, because I'm pretty sure it's in the article.
Yes.
So I don't want to send. I know it's like whenever I open DocSend, I'm like, I ask myself, am I allowed to share?
Yeah, no, of course.
But it's like, yeah, I want to highlight this article because I think it's like a pretty good one.
Amazing.
Yeah, maybe we could talk about like the general thesis on like, Acrew's thesis on healthcare. And since like right now AI is also making like, the new AI workflow of healthcare services is like very different than before. So maybe we could talk about from the overall landscape to like the details on like things that you find interesting.
Yeah, for sure. So I think that, so maybe to contextualize, health is our newest in name thesis area at Acrew. We have three. So fintech, which includes some of our commerce work, security and data, and then health as the third. That has resulted from kind of years of investing in this space, particularly, including from my partner Vishal. I think our view is that there's a really exciting opportunity right now, really a generational moment to disrupt healthcare, because we're seeing the convergence of technological, regulatory, and sort of like this market readiness in a way that we haven't really seen in a long time. Part of this is resulted from, kind of what we're seeing just as it relates to data, data availability and transparency. This is from, kind of regulatory tailwinds, as well as like macro tailwinds, like telemedicine utilization has skyrocketed, particularly post-COVID. We're seeing EHR penetration, kind of really reach this inflection point in steady state, and regulation as well, which has sort of freed up access in a way to really kind of provide this data transparency and interoperability. And so for us, I think that there's a number of trends that we're thinking about, but kind of our holistic thesis is that health data in particular is a big unlock in fostering opportunity to lower administrative burden across various stakeholders within the healthcare ecosystem, but also on the consumer side, giving consumers more agency for their own health. And so we think a lot about those, kind of two key buckets as it relates to where we're spending time.
For sure. Since maybe we could talk about the subsectors that you guys listed here. Like there's digitization, there's regulation, and there's like explosion of data. So like those are like the things that make healthcare very important nowadays. Maybe we could start with like digitization. So like I feel like whenever you think about a hospital, it's like it doesn't really scream technical to me, because it's always like the most like, I want to say outdated stuff, but like it's like the machine that you look into it, it's like, oh, something that has been there for like the past like 45 years. And like but how do you think about like digitization in the hospital space, and then what are people digitizing on? I know it's like transcription is like one of the big component these days, but like, what are some other things that you feel like people are not really thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think this chart shows it pretty clearly, which is like just in the last, call it like 5 to 7 years, like in particular, you're seeing the adoption of, kind of health records being digitized, right? Like, I think that in particular is a big piece, because it sort of like centralizes and creates a repository of data that can actually be leveraged to either make like better clinical decisions, but then also, just support in this collation of information to give consumers more agency of their health. But then on the, kind of from a healthcare ecosystem perspective, right? Like just having all of this like centralized in one place and making it interoperable for analysis, for care, for a whole host of things. So I think that that's something that, we've seen. And I think that this like has really unlocked an opportunity to now, start leveraging some of that data in interesting ways. And so for us, like, we think more holistically around, kind of call it the personalization of care for patients, but then also you mentioned transcription and scribing as one example, but we're seeing a number of things across, kind of various stakeholders in creating more efficiencies on the workflow side to drive like real automation.
Totally. When it comes to like regulation, I feel like the health, I mean, I like, this is the category that I have no clue on. Like, what is the regulatory, the new like regulations are like actually doing to healthcare data? And is this like allowed to just collect everything, or, like, I don't, yeah, like, literally, like, please enlighten me on like what is going on here?
Yeah, I mean, I won't go too deep in the weeds on this. I think our intention of really showing this is that there's been a number of various regulatory changes that ultimately have just created an opportunity for more data transparency and interoperability. That's like one of the key pieces that we think about. There's a whole host of other things that we've also highlighted here as it relates to kind of cost transparency and a host of other things, but really the intention for this timeline was really to show that we're kind of hitting this inflection point, a lot of which has been driven by some of these regulatory changes to really use some of this information in interesting ways to support increasing access to care and leveraging this data to give agency for consumers as well.
Totally. So like since like data is everywhere, like what are things that people are collecting? And then how is currently data being storage? Like who is storing it? And like I guess like where would the money actually come from? Since like I mean, I assume you can't really sell the healthcare data to maybe you can. So like how like I guess like how do people even like after collecting them, like do you have to pay for the storage fee from your own health insurance? Or how is this like actually
On the consumer side, you're
im-
saying, or?
yeah, impacting? I guess like how is healthcare?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. So on the consumer side, I mean, we think a lot about the convergence of your traditional like health records, which are not, like they are now accessible. You can ask your physician to send those to you. But I think more importantly, there's also like other pieces of data that
Mhm,
are coming to bear. So I think as we think about like wearable penetration as an example,
mhm,
really increasing pretty substantially. I think most people that you see, at least in Silicon Valley now, have an Aura ring or something or the other. But even beyond that, right? Like Apple Watches, Whoops, et cetera. Like people are collecting information
mhm,
about their health in a way that they hadn't in a really long time. So like, how do you make sense of that information, right?
mhm,
We think a lot about like what does like the Apple Health of the future really look like? This is
mhm,
my partner Vishal's like like one of the
mhm,
favorite things to kind of really go out in a rabbit hole around, because you have all of these like disparate
mhm,
pieces of information that can collectively you can make a lot of sense of. I think that there's another emergent trend that we're seeing around kind of like collecting and taking a deeper look at biomarkers. So I don't know if you've heard of companies like Function Health and Superpower, but they're helping consumers, really test for like a much more comprehensive set of biomarkers than you would at your, kind of like your annual physical labs, giving insights for things that, are just much more comprehensive, right? So that's another piece that we're seeing. So I think that there's a bunch of different ways, like people are collecting their own data, they're testing for different things, as well as getting access on the health record side. So it's a convergence on the consumer side.
totally. I think that's really interesting to think about. It's like both from the consumer angle, like people were tracking more accurate, more like personalized data versus like, from the actual industrial grade of like people tracking everything. So like I mean, I'm sure like you already mentioned about some of the key trends here, but maybe we could go over the general stats that like maybe something that surprised you or like why you feel like yeah, like what you feel like are like just like things that you feel like should be highlighted in the healthcare space.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big things that we're thinking about, right, is healthcare is expensive, like, and
Mhm,
the outcomes in the U.S.
mhm,
are lagging, particularly
mhm,
as it relates to other developed countries.
mhm,
Things like life expectancy, infant mortality,
mhm,
et cetera. And so the question is just why is that happening, right? As one example, I think another theme that we're also seeing is that like, and we've talked pretty extensively about it at this point, but consumers really taking more agency for their own health. Like I think that
mhm,
that's coming from, kind of more availability of data, their new payment models, and then just kind of general like a trust piece that we're also seeing. And then on the provider side, right, like starting to see like really stark increases in administrative costs, really outweighing kind of the staffing shortages that we're seeing on the actual like care delivery side. So I think that there's just like a lot of various, and there's a whole host of other themes and trends that I know you kind of flip through this that are in here, but ultimately, we think about this opportunity to really just improve operations and quality and ultimately increase access and decrease costs for consumers. So that's a really important thing that we pay attention to. And in terms of areas that we're spending time, I think that holistically, thinking a lot about the personalization of care, particularly with better data. We're thinking a lot about how to reduce administrative burden with kind of workflow tooling. And that's where a lot of the applied AI opportunities really live. And then we're also thinking about kind of tooling for better data management. So that's kind of like the third bucket. Just to kind of highlight some of the recent investments that we've made, just to kind of like paint the picture even more clearly. One of the companies that we invested in called Rapid SOS that helps emergency responders just get better, faster information during emergencies. It's pretty complex and antiquated system that a lot of emergency response teams have today, and it's very outdated. And so Rapid SOS really helps ingest kind of data from all these different connected devices, et cetera, and create like much more of a holistic output and streamlined output faster. So kind of responders can kind of get to patients as quickly as possible. So that's one example. Another example is a company called Bet that is more of a data interoperability platform, specifically for self-insured employers, where the Bet is helping these companies have much more visibility into claims data that can, help on the employer side, like optimize spending, but also like make better decisions for their employees. And then lastly, we invested in a company called Cornerstone AI that actually uses AI to help clean and standardize. You were asking about like where the data lives and the complexity of all of that, right? So Cornerstone really helps in helping to clean, standardize, and prep this data to be utilized for a whole host of different use cases. And so that's just an example of things to shed light into like where we're spending time. And we have a few that are unannounced more recently, one more on the patient side, and then another that's again on the provider data side. But so that's really where we're spending time, and we're excited.
Totally. I think like one of the things that I want to highlight is like, I feel like it sounds like you guys are investing in the efficiency improvement and cutting costs than actual physically diagnose side of things. So like, I think there's like two trends I'm seeing. Like there's like obviously investors that are like focusing on like making like, I mean, I'm using a lawyer as an example because like I've seen so many like legal apps these days, but like like making the legal or healthcare more efficient to help the physician or help the lawyer to like speed up their work instead of like help actually drafting the contract or help actually do the surgery. I feel like those are like two different bets. And then I guess like, can you elaborate on like why do you feel like this is a better bet to like make it more efficient, and how does the I guess like economic turnaround kind of look like for that? Because I feel like the other way to like how literally use AI to diagnose something is very bold, but on the other hand, I feel like it's kind of also like it's like a high risk, high reward thing. Like, so how do you kind of justify that from like a finance perspective to, make the decision on like, hey, we should go in on left or right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that your call out is really spot on in terms of like where we've been spending the bulk of our time, which is a lot more like software oriented solutions that are supporting and kind of reducing some of that administrative burden. But we're also thinking about like how to make like more efficient clinical decisions, better clinical decisions as well. We have one investment in a company called Kintsugi that is leveraging kind of voice to detect signs of anxiety and depression, and they support therapists in kind of their own practices. And so that's like one example of something that we've done that's much more on the clinical decisioning side. But I think that there's value to accrue in a variety of different dimensions, but we really think a lot about the picks and shovels and just like creating like more efficient operations. So each stakeholder in the ecosystem can really optimize for doing what they want to do, which is increasing access to care, better care, higher quality care, improving outcomes, and then ultimately like kind of just decreasing cost on the consumer side.
Got it. I wonder, so like maybe we could walk through any of your portfolio companies as example on like, how you're evaluating them, or to like from meeting the founder to diligencing the company to like thinking about winning the deal and thinking about exiting on, how you kind of like go through the process.
Yeah. So for us, maybe I can give like a very tangible example of a recent investment that is much more on the fintech side, which is a company called Cometa. And Cometa has built sort of a payments and operating systems for schools in Latin America, which have historically been really underserved with technology, but also really help facilitate one of the largest categories of consumer spend in the region. So this was a company that, we had been doing some, kind of work around, I in particular have done some investing in vertical SaaS companies in the past, and, really like this model of kind of software plus payments, and had also been thinking a lot about education and much more from the lens of like, how does AI improve kind of the educational experience for consumers? We were introduced to this team by our friends at Homebrew, Satya and Hunter, and they were raving about the team. And as we got to know them, Lauren, John, and I, we really understood very quickly why the Homebrew team was raving about the team. And as we got to know them, and we uncovered like even more points of connectivity within our own portfolio, and consistently the feedback that we kept hearing about this team is this is like an incredible team, best team that can come together and really have like insights into this space in particular to build something meaningful and special. So like we are very like founder oriented and founder led in addition to being thesis led. And so that was like a big piece that was important to us is this the right team, and do they have the kind of are they culminating in something really like special to build something meaningful in the space? So that was like point one. We did a lot of work to really assess the opportunity in the market, right? I think that that required, speaking with a lot of the schools that they were serving, really mapping out the addressable like market sizing around that space. And, like we were actually surprised to find like how sneaky large this category really is in the space. And it, as we kind of like dug into the dynamics even more, like just saw the pain point so acutely in terms of like how much room there was for technological evolution and to build like a really compelling payments business in the process. So all of those things, kind of converged in us, investing. We invested alongside Reach Capital, Kazakh, and Homebrew. And this was an investment we made maybe 6 months ago. So it's earlier in our relationship, but the team is fired up and kind of exceeding plans. So it's been going really well.
Totally. I wonder, so like I feel like especially for like the foreign companies, and like you mentioned about like when you guys meet the founders are really great. Like what are some characters that you feel like were making them stand out?
Yeah, I mean, I think that a few things. I think one, we think a lot about sort of founder problem fit. And so, do you know this problem like very inherently such that you can build something differentiated and really impactful? So that was something that came through like from the very first conversation. I think the founders had different points of connectivity to the education system in different parts of Spanish-speaking LATAM. And, kind of this combined with like fintech experience as well. So that was like a really interesting convergence from an experience perspective. I think the other thing more qualitatively that we look for is like, like what is the ambition and like what are you looking to really build? And I think we heard that like very clearly that they want to build something like massive and impactful. And I think that that's something that really drew us to, kind of like contextualizing like where this goes. And then the last thing is, kind of, and this is probably more of a something that I tend to gravitate towards is folks that really like leverage data to make decisions and kind of really orient around building like a really data-driven culture. And that was something that we saw like very, very clearly. So I would say that those are like a couple of the big things. There's plenty of other things I can rave about this team. But those three would be the most important that I'd contextualize.
Totally. I wonder, how do you think about like from the sourcing perspective, since you mentioned this is like sent by another investor, and like from like an active sourcing perspective, like I guess like how do you build up the pipeline for yourself? Just because I feel like as a younger person, especially, I feel like a lot of deal sourcing is like a very important like skill set to have. And how do you continuously like either letting other obviously other top VC funds to like share deal or like share the good deals with you, and also like maintaining the relationship with like the founder community to like continuously sourcing from the founder community as well?
Yeah. I think it's a good question. And I think there's a lot of different approaches. You will never have just like one consistent, kind of source, right? Like there's a bunch that comes together. We're really grateful for the relationships that we have with our co-investors that like to partner with us. I think a lot of that stems from kind of the domain depth that we've built in these different thesis areas. And so that's certainly something that, kind of funnels really interesting teams to our own networks. The other things that like I do, more specifically, so I'm a tinkerer at heart, and I love just being closest to where the builders are, like, and I'm always like trying out new kind of under the radar products and like experimenting with different tools and platforms. And so I like to like, really have my ear to the ground in terms of like what's starting to percolate, like what are the things people are thinking about, and that helps direct energy into spaces I want to go deeper in. So like we are very thesis focused at Acrew, and as part of that, like not only are we kind of building and formulating a point of view of what an emergent landscape might look like, but also like making sure we're kind of meeting all the companies and kind of really meeting the builders that are thinking about this space as well. And we tend to, really come with kind of a prepared point of view because of that approach. And so I would say that's like a handful of those things, right? Like the thesis orientation, kind of the relationships that we've cultivated with different co-investors. And then for me personally, just like I ears to the ground and just like playing around with stuff and really just kind of building more and more connectivity and staying close to the builders. And I benefit. My husband is a founder, and so we're always like tinkering on things together too. And so we tend to find interesting people that are also thinking about spaces that we think there might be areas of opportunity.
Totally. Love that. I want to like be mindful of the time, so I want to end with a 1 minute fire round for you. What's your favorite book?
My favorite book, Creative Confidence.
Who made the biggest impact in your career?
Oh my gosh. That's a good question. I don't know. I have a couple of people. I'm probably say my dad.
Love that. Who would you invite to your dinner party?
Oprah.
Where can we find you outside of work?
On what?
Where can we find you outside of work?
Probably crafting or DIYing something.
Oh my God. What do you craft? Did you make the backdrop or no?
I actually did. So I built this frame, and it is this like wallpaper situation that I did pull together.
Me? Wait, I'm back. Okay, you're back. Wait,
Yeah.
Did you make this?
I built the frame, yes.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my God, you're so talented. Wow. Maitree, thank you so much for coming to the show today. It was such a fun conversation. Thank you for giving us a masterclass in health and consumer AI.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. This was super fun. And hopefully I'll see you soon, babe.
Totally. Okay, let me quickly end stream. Sorry.